The following may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Woman plans to take legal action against NWRA for negligence. A 34-year-old mother of one who is now on crutches and in pain due to alleged medical negligence is threatening to sue the Northwest Regional Health Authority, NWRA. Sarah Lutchman of Aranguez, who is also employed at NWRA as a clerk, sent a pre-action protocol letter to NWRA yesterday, requesting a response in 7 days, or she would initiate legal action through her attorneys, seen as JTUM, SC, instructed by Sarah Lackhan. In the letter, the attorney stated that while attending the antenatal clinic of the Port of Spain General Hospital on March 13, 2019, Lutchman was referred to the obstetric department for bilateral hip joint pain. The following day, she was medically examined at the obstetric department and she received treatment forward review for an MSU, a urine test for culture and sensitivity on or about March 20, 2019. But on March 18, 2019, Lutchman again went to the obstetric department and was diagnosed with pelvic girdle pain. She was warded and discharged the following day. However, on April 2, 2019, around 11 a.m., she was readmitted to the hospital with pelvic girdle pain. She was also due to give birth on that day. She was admitted to the antenatal ward where she was examined by the obstetric team of nurses and doctors. The following day, her baby was delivered via cesarean. In the letter, Lackhan said on April 5, 2019, their client was discharged from the prenatal ward, but her baby remained warded at the neonatal intensive care unit. However, Lutchman was having extreme difficulty ambulating and asked the nurse to administer medication for her continuing pelvic girdle pain. Lutchman was told that she could not receive any pain medication apart from Panadol because she was officially discharged. Lackhan said it was then that their client realized that without pain medication she could not walk. During visiting hours that day, Lutchman pleaded with the nurses to allow her to return home so she could use the bathroom and shower with her husband's assistance, but they refused. Lackhan said around 9:45 p.m., Lutchman needed to go to the bathroom, but she was refused assistance. She made her way to the bathroom, but while she was exiting, her legs gave way and she fell on the bathroom floor. She screamed out for help and was then surrounded by a doctor and nurses. She was put in a wheelchair and taken to a bed where she remained in excruciating pain until she was given an injection for pain around 11:30 p.m. Later that day, an X-ray revealed that she suffered a femoral head-neck fracture from the accident, and a subsequent examination by an orthopedic team revealed she had sustained a hip fracture. On April 9, a CT pelvis and 3D reconstruction was ordered, and for the first time it was medically noted that Lutchman required strict bed rest. She was diagnosed as having chronic slipped capital femoral epiphysis, SCFE. Lackhan said the following day a doctor diagnosed Lutchman with transient osteoporosis of the hip, TOJ. On April 17, 2019, Lutchman underwent the medically recommended open reduction internal fixation surgery, ORIF, where 2 cannulated 7.0 millimeter screws were implanted into her hip with washers. She was discharged the following day and subsequently treated at the hospital's outpatient clinic on April 25 and August 2, 2019. She was also bedridden and unable to breastfeed and take care of her baby. However, the surgery was unsuccessful, and the second surgery, total hip replacement, was done on September 1, 2020. The lawyers gave the NWRA 7 days to acknowledge the letter and 28 days to respond. If the NWRAs fail to meet these deadlines, they will commence legal proceedings for medical negligence and or breach of statutory duty. What's your verdict? Do you believe this is a case of simple negligence? Or do you believe this is a case of gross negligence which should result in the victim being awarded millions in compensation? Neighbors discovered the body of elderly woman in her yard. Residents on Tuesday made a horrific discovery when they found the body of their beloved elderly neighbor in the yard of her home in St. Joseph. The deceased was identified as Audrey Salandi, 76. According to a police report, at about 4 p.m., police officers were called to Maracas Royal Road where Salandi's body was found. Police believe she was attempting to climb fruit trees in her yard when she slipped, fell and hit her head and died. Police said fruits believed to have been hand-picked by Salandi from nearby fruit trees in her yard were recovered from the pockets of the clothing she was wearing at the time of her death. The district medical officer was also called to the scene, where he made his pronouncement and ordered the body's removal to the Forensic Science Center in St. James, pending an autopsy. Pregnant woman robbed and erased while waiting to conduct land transaction. A 26-year-old pregnant woman was erased in her car yesterday afternoon on Todd's Road, Central Trinidad. The victim was identified as Rizan Roach Lucas of Trin-City. The report states that the woman had arranged a meeting with two men in regards to the purchase of a parcel of land. The men told investigators they had a phone conversation with Roach Lucas around 11:30 a.m. yesterday, where she informed them that she was on her way to the property with the cash to conduct the transaction. The two men told police that when they arrived at the location, they observed a dark gray Toyota Aqua parked on the side of the road. The car's engine was running and the woman appeared to be slumped against the driver's seat. The men approached Roach Lucas and saw that she was bleeding from injuries to her face and chest. They notified the police and officers from the Central Division, led by Sergeant Harriet, responded. Police believe that Roach Lucas was targeted by criminals who robbed and shot her as she waited for the sellers to arrive. 4 9mm spent shells were found at the scene. Investigations continue. Police have repeatedly called on citizens not to carry large sums of cash and to be wary when they conduct financial transactions during the Christmas season, especially with people they meet online. This is due to criminal elements going after soft targets, and there's been an increase in the number of robbery-related offenses during the Yuletide season, police said. 30 women have been erased thus far, and the number of women erased in 2020 was 54. Roach Lucas's death has pushed the homicide toll to 438 up to last night. The comparative figure for the same period in 2020 was 387. Farley Augustine tells AG that lawyers representing THA are former attorneys general. The Tobago House of Assembly THA, Office of the Chief Secretary and Deputy Chief Secretary are being represented by 3 former attorneys general in the case brought by sitting Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi. This was contended by Chief Secretary Farley Augustine, who was speaking at a media conference on Wednesday. He was responding to Al-Rawi's statements made at a press briefing yesterday, where he said that the THA is being represented by lawyers who often defend the opposition in court matters. Noting that the matter will begin on January 5 before Justice Margaret Mohammed, Augustine said arguments will be placed before the court while affidavits will be placed on the record. As for the lawyers in their fold, he said, former AG Anand Ramlogan was brought by Duke on an amicus basis, which is Latin for friend of the court. Besides, he said the THA is represented by former AG Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj and ex-AG John Jeremy. He pointed out that Maharaj's wife died on Monday when the emergency hearing was called, and as a result, responsibility was passed to his junior, Kail Taklal Singh. Incidentally, all of the attorneys have ties to the United National Congress, UNC. However, the THA chief believes it's a matter of AGs versus AGs. He said, what is developing in this case is a case where the people of Tobago will be represented more or less by 3 former attorney generals, all going against the current attorney general, and that's because we have a strong belief that this is a waste of the court's time and another attempt by the attorney general and his party in Trinidad to disrupt and disregard the autonomous nature of the Tobago House of Assembly. Al-Rawi filed an emergency hearing of construction summons after Duke was appointed Deputy Chief Secretary of the THA, while simultaneously holding the post of President of the Public Services Association, PSA, and being a member of the Registration, Recognition and Certification Board, RRCB. Since he received income from both the PSA and RRCB, the state is questioning whether there was a conflict of interest. An emergency hearing was called before Justice Eleanor Donaldson Honeywell on Monday, 4 days after it was filed. Duke has since resigned from the PSA leadership effective January 1st. The Joint Trade Union Movement, JTUM, is calling on the government to withdraw its vaccine mandate for public sector employees. Speaking after a meeting with Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi yesterday afternoon, JTUM leader Ansel Rajit described the meeting as a sham, as he said it came after the announcement was made by the Prime Minister without any consultation with the unions. Rajit said the movement's position was clearly stated during the meeting with Al-Rawi. He said, if the outcome is to encourage more people to be vaccinated, you are going about it the wrong way. Indeed, if you are to engage us in those discussions going forward, you ought to withdraw that unilateral position that was announced by the Prime Minister. Rajit added that the union is not against voluntary vaccination, but mandatory vaccination. He said, do not shoot the messenger or send your people to shoot the messenger. Treat with the core issue of the unilateral approach, the dictatorial approach, and so on. Withdraw the position, Dr. Rowley, and let's take it from the start. Let us have a collaborative approach as to how all of us are going to treat with this pandemic. Early yesterday, trade union leaders delivered a letter to the office of the Prime Minister at Whitehall regarding the government's vaccine mandate for public sector workers come mid-January. Ministry of Education states that Forms 1 to 3 will return to physical classes in February. Students of Forms 1 to 3 will return to physical classes in February on a rotational basis. The Ministry of Education made the announcement via a press release on Wednesday. It said these students are required to remain engaged in remote learning in January, allowing schools to plan for their return to physical attendance in February on a rotational basis. Additionally, the ministry said all students of Forms 4 to 6 will continue to attend school physically for teaching classes, practicals, and school-based assignments from January 3. Post-secondary and tertiary students, it added, will be allowed to attend physical classes for teaching and practicals from January 20. The ministry noted that Primary schools will continue to operate remotely in Term 2, with the exception of Standard 5 students who will attend school physically from February. It also announced that the SEA exam will be held on March 31. It said delaying this exam, as was done in 2020 and 2021, results in many challenges, the major ones being the myriad difficulties of adhering CXC and SEA exams concurrently, and the uncertainty of students with respect to transfer applications and the results of SEA reviews, which may result in them switching schools while already enrolled in Form 1. Furthermore, the ministry revealed that ECC students, along with Standards 1 to 4, will resume physical attendance on a rotational basis in Term 2, April 2022. It added, these proposed plans are predicted on the health circumstances of Trinidad and Tobago, and further details of physical attendance will be released after consultation with stakeholders. The ministry further urged parents to vaccinate their children as they return to the classroom. Physical classes will resume for all secondary school students in February 2022. Moments after the Ministry of Education revealed that physical classes will resume for all secondary and tertiary students as well as Standard 5 pupils from February, the president of Movement for Concerned Parents, Clarence Mendoza, has made it clear parents will not be sending their children to school because of rising COVID-19 cases. We will be keeping our children at home, Mendoza said in response to the ministry's release, which notified the public about the full return of physical classes. Early childhood schools and primary schools will also be reopening for Standards 1 to 4 in April. In a 5-page statement yesterday, the Ministry of Education detailed how the remainder of the school year, Terms 2 and 3, will look in 2022. It said the decision was made following consultations with wider stakeholders and TUTA on November 25 and 26, and again with TUTA on December 10. But in an immediate reaction, Mendoza accused the government of putting all citizens at risk. The parent body is very disgruntled. We have been monitoring the Ministry of Education as it consults with TUTA. Parents say clearly that they will be keeping their kids at home until better can be done. He added, whether they are vaccinated or not, they will keep their children at home. In the meantime, Mendoza said parents are homeschooling their children. The pandemic is changing. The new variant is taking over. The hospitals are filled. There is nothing new but to deliberately put children out there. When the cases are so high, it is asking too much from parents, and they are not going to do that. He expressed disappointment that his organization was not consulted. The ministry has been consulting with TUTA, and we also know that many teachers will not get vaccinated either. This is a challenge for parents. Even though some teachers and principals are vaccinated, it is only 50% of the population that is vaccinated, he added. Guardian Media reached out to TUTA's president, Antonia Tika de Freitas, to find out whether TUTA has agreed to the new guidelines, but she declined to comment. Second Vice President Kryla Robertson Thomas said she will only comment after she reads the Ministry of Education's statement. According to the Ministry of Education, schools have not been the cause of rising COVID cases. It said a total of 162 infections were reported between October 4 to December 10. This agrees with global reports that physical school has not been proven to cause significant rises in the level of COVID-19 infections within countries. The Education Ministry said all post-secondary and tertiary students will be allowed to attend physical classes for teaching and practicals from January 2022. All students of Forms 4 to 6 or equivalent will attend school physically for teaching classes, practicals, and school-based assessments from January 3, 2022. Students of Forms 1 to 3 or equivalent will engage in remote learning in January 2022, allowing schools to plan for their return to physical attendance in February 2022 on a rotational basis. Primary schools will continue to operate remotely in Term 2, except for Standard 5 students, who will attend school physically from February 2022. The SEA examination, the ministry said, will be held on March 31, 2022. It said having the exam later in the year results in challenges. The Education Ministry also said Early Childhood Care ECCE students, along with Standards 1 to 4, will resume physical attendance on a rotational basis in April. Parents were encouraged to vaccinate their children before they return to the classroom. The Education Ministry cited a UNICEF report which said keeping schools closed for a long period was having a detrimental effect on the well-being of children. But it also assured that it had implemented measures in schools to maintain a safe environment. These include the provision of sinks for hand washing throughout school compounds, freestanding and handheld temperature scanners, cleaning and sanitation materials, and the implementation of entry protocols.